Today, we are going on a journey deep into the Indian knowledge system to tackle a question that's, well, at the heart of everything we think we know. I mean, really think about that for a second. When you say you know something, what does that actually mean? How did you come to that knowledge? Is it something you saw with your own eyes, something you figured out, or maybe something you read or were told? Well, ancient Indian philosophers were obsessed with this question, and they developed this absolutely brilliant framework to help answer it.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the basic question, introduce the Pramāṇa framework, and then we'll dive into the 6 main ways we acquire knowledge. We'll even look at how different schools of thought had their own takes on this. And then, this is the really cool part, we'll see why all this ancient wisdom is more relevant today than ever.
All right, so let's start with that big question. How do we know? The Indian knowledge system gives us this amazing tool called Pramāṇa Theory, which is all about understanding the valid ways we come to know things.
You know, the word pramana itself is pretty revealing. Pra means supreme, and mana means measure. So a pramana is literally a valid measure or means of knowledge. And what's so incredible about this whole idea is that it isn't looking for one single perfect way to know everything. Instead, it totally embraces the idea that there are multiple valid paths to truth. And this theory, it breaks down any act of knowing into 3 really simple, essential parts. Seriously, once you see this, you're going to start noticing this pattern everywhere in your own life. Okay, so first up, you've got the pramata. That's the knower. That's you, that's me. Then there's the prameya. That's the object or the idea we want to know about. And finally, the pramana. You can think of the pramana as the bridge between the two. It's the specific method you use to gain that knowledge. Let's use a classic example to make this super clear. Imagine you're looking at a mountain in the distance, and you see a plume of smoke. So you are the observer, the pramata. The fire itself, which you can't actually see, is the object you want to know about. That's the prameya. So how do you know it's there? You use reasoning, right? You connect the smoke to the fire. That mental process, that is the pramana. So what are these different methods of knowing, these pramanas? Well, while the ancient schools debated the exact number, there are 6 major ones that are widely recognized. So let's dive in and unpack them one by one.
The first one, and probably the most fundamental, is Pratyaksha, or perception. This is simply the knowledge that comes to us directly through our senses. It's immediate, it's direct. It's the foundation of so much of what we know. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? You see a tree, you know it's there. You feel heat from a flame, you know it's hot. This is knowledge at its most basic level, with no middleman, no reasoning needed. We just instinctively trust what our senses tell us. But of course, we don't just rely on our senses, do we? The second method is Anumana, which is inference. This is where we start playing detective, connecting the dots and moving from what we observe to what we can logically conclude. Let's go back to that mountain. You don't see the fire directly. If you did, that would be perception. Instead, you see the smoke. And by applying that general rule you've learned, where there's smoke, there's fire, you make a logical leap. This is indirect knowledge built purely on reasoning. Now, a third really powerful tool for knowing is Upamana. And this is learning through comparison and analogy. We do this constantly, all the time, trying to understand something new by relating it to something we already get. So imagine this. A friend tells you that a gavaya, or wild cow, looks just like a regular domestic cow. Later, you're out in a forest, and you see an animal that perfectly fits that description. That aha moment of recognition, that's knowledge gained purely through comparison. Okay, this next one is just fascinating. It's called Arthapatti, or postulation. It's what our minds do when we're faced with a puzzle. We find the missing piece. That one single explanation that makes 2 seemingly contradictory facts suddenly make perfect sense. Here's the classic riddle that explains it. We have 2 facts. A man named Devadatta doesn't eat at all during the day, and yet he's gaining weight. Now, these 2 things just don't add up, right? So how is that possible? Well, the only way to make both of those facts true is to assume he eats at night. We haven't seen him do it, so it's not perception. But we know it has to be true because it's the only logical way to explain the situation. We've gained new knowledge through postulation. Next up, we have Anupalabdhi, and this is such a beautiful, almost counterintuitive idea. This is the art of gaining knowledge from what is not there,
from the very absence of something. Just think about it for a second. When you look at a table and you don't see a book on it, you gain the very real positive knowledge that the book is not here. Your very act of not perceiving the book becomes a valid source of information about what's going on. How cool is that?
And the sixth and final method is Shabda, or verbal testimony. If you stop and think about it, a huge amount of what we know comes not from our own direct experience, but from what we're told by reliable sources, people, books, teachers, you name it.
But, and this is a really big but, there's a crucial condition here. For testimony to be a valid source of knowledge, the source itself absolutely has to be trustworthy. Whether it's a professor, a scientific paper, or an expert on TV, we are constantly making judgments about reliability. We have to, right?
But here's where it gets really interesting. Not every philosophical school accepted all 6 of these methods, and this diversity of thought is really a hallmark of the Indian knowledge system.
For example, the superlogical Nyaya school accepted 4 methods, while the Sankhya school was more focused on just 3. And then you had the Mimamsa school, who argued for all 6. This wasn't about one being right and the other being wrong. It was a vibrant, centuries-long debate about which tools were the most essential for discovering truth.
So what does all this ancient philosophy have to do with our lives today? Well, as it turns out, this framework isn't just a historical curiosity. It's a timeless toolkit for critical thinking that we all use every single day, whether we realize it or not.
Just look at this. It's amazing how perfectly these ancient ideas map onto our modern world. Perception, that's direct observation in a science experiment. Inference is the very heart of scientific reasoning. Postulation is exactly what scientists do when they form a hypothesis. And testimony, that's the entire system of academic literature and peer review that science is built on. These aren't just old philosophical concepts. They are the active, living tools of how we think today.
So I want to leave you with this question. Which of these ways of knowing do you find yourself relying on the most? Are you guided more by your direct perception, what you see and feel, or are you all about logic and inference? Becoming aware of these different paths doesn't just make you a better thinker, it helps you understand the very fabric of how you construct your own reality.